So one of the last things we have to do in here before we go into some useful functions are the collisions, which are going to be a little bit tricky. But let's add a new pin here and drag this one a bit down, because we're going to do the collisions before we do this here. Actually, no, we're going to do them after that. Right, we're doing that after that. And we're going to grab down our reroute. And first of all, we do the same thing we always do. We detect it, and we are up to here where we like transform the mesh. It's pretty much the same thing. And we're going to copy that in. Connected boy. Actually, we need probably a new one. Get all actors of class. And we first of all need to create actually a collision. We didn't do that. So let's create ourselves a new folder here. Collision. And let's go inside, right click, blueprint, dynamic mesh actor. That's all the things we already did. I'm going to copy one of the names here just so things are consistent. Collision. Alright, let's open that up. Do we actually need it? I don't think we actually need it. We're going to create a child from that. And we're going to name it child. For now, put a 1 in front, and we're going to create a box. So one step back, we're going into the subtract or whatever, and we're just going to grab ourselves that thing here because this is our box. Close this up. Let's go into the collision child again, and we're just going into event graph. I'm pasting that in. Rebuild event and plug this in, plug this guy in, right click, create a variable, right click, create a variable, compile, give it a default value of the 50, 50, 50 we had, make instance editable, show 3D widget, give it a category box draw, and we should be good. Let's compile this just as quick test, drag it in. It will also have the material. It shouldn't be blue. So we're going to step back here. We're creating a new instance from our wireframe. We're opening it up, and we're going to make this red just so we can see the collisions are red. And in our collision child, we are now going to change the material to the red one. And if we compile this and we drag in our collision child, it's going to be red. We need to drag the collisions in our collisions folder. For some reason, I don't have it anymore. So I'm going to call this collision underscore room. Make sure it is inside the main, and I'm going to drag the collisions inside the collisions folder and compile this. All right, we got a collision done. We don't need this anymore. We don't need the wireframe anymore. We don't need the subtract anymore. The child combined there is where we work with. So now we can actually take our collision parent, put it into this guy here, plug it in, plug this in. Actually, we need probably a new for each loop because of a little update error. We can delete this here up here, and we can plug this in, we can plug this in, we can plug this in. Now we just need to change, create new variables from that. I think it would even work without creating new ones and just using those, but you know, why not? And those all here go into subtract, just so everything is nicely sorted out. Subtract, subtract, subtract. I know I'm working a little bit faster here, but those are things we already did. So I'm going to copy those variables again, and those here are going to be collision, 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 and you go into collision, drag the rest in, collision, collision, and I'm now going to replace those full folder path set, and going to move this over here. And instead of subtract, we're going to have collision, make sure, collision underscore, by the way. Make sure you write it right. Collision. Collision. Okay. Alright. So now let's just check this out really quick. What it should be doing right now is copy it and transform it. we shouldn't see anything visual. We can test things if it works up to this point by just taking our own mesh here from the actual geochild, which we're setting right here in the beginning, and temporarily replacing the allocate mesh with our ones. And we should be able to, like, when we update this, and it seems like I made an error here. You can see it's not going through even though it's in the collision. So somewhere the error here. Ah, you see, subtract here. I didn't change this one. On follow path subtract, on follow path collision. Tiny little error here and you messed it up. So there we go. Now it's correct and it's going through, and we can test if things actually work by just dragging in our own mesh here, target mesh, right? And replacing the allocate for a second. Compile, and there we go. If we now update the collision, it should, like, with a second, we should see it building the cube, right? So we can just delete it. This is working to this point. You know what? Let's think about what we're doing here for a second, because I want to explain something. And at the same time, we're going to write some comments. So up here, let's get ourselves some good space here. Up here, this whole thing is geometry, right? We're adding the geometry right here because we're detecting it. We are looking through the folders, and then we are copying it to a separate location, and then we are copying it to a temporary space. We're transforming it, getting a material ID, and booleaning it or appending it, right? And here, this thing is essentially the same thing, just with the difference that we are subtracting it in the end, right? And then we're going to actually write the material slots here, right? So this one here is subtract. This one here is write actual slots. Well, write actual slots, subtract. Meaning, down here, we're doing the collisions, right? So collision. And because of some plans I have later, we actually need to combine it into our mesh, so it's actually one and the same. We have currently as collision just a simple box, and we're going to combine this into it. If we take a look at our geometry, we already did that. We just need to append it. We don't want to, like, pull it together, we just want to append it. So I'm just going to copy this here into our collision here, right? Collision, and we just simply want to append it into it. This is the target mesh and this is the append mesh. Let's compile this and see. And we should have appended it. We don't give it our actual material yet. And there is where I'm trying to explain something. We are doing the collisions last. We already created the material slots, right? Actually, we could maybe do this later, it doesn't matter. But we can get max material ID. So we can, from our current mesh, get the maximum material IDs we have. We can plus 1 this, so right, this is the maximum material slots we have here. So currently we have 5 here, plus 1 would be 6, right? So 1 more. And then we can make the collisions have always the highest one. So remap material ID. And here, before we append it into it, we're going to remap the materials of this thing here. And we're going to make it always the highest. Why do I want to have the materials for the collision always be the highest? Because later on we can, well, yeah, we could split mesh by material IDs. There's an actual node for that, which is like super broken for some reason for me. But we're essentially splitting it later on by the material ID. I have a different workaround for that. The fact just simply is by knowing that the collisions are always the highest material ID, we know where they are and we can always grab them out. So make this a little bit longer. And here we can make an extra comment, for example, collisions always last material ID. Save that. I think the reason for that is that we are not writing it. So I think we actually might wanna do this here last. So let's just make a new one here and drag this one below. See. Because it probably wouldn't matter. Now it's building it properly because we need the actual geometry. And then the combine, let's just see if we can like give it a material here in the last one and test around a bit. Let's just give it a red. because the collision should be red. And there we go, right? Let's see what happens if we give the subtract something higher. Let's say like a 9. Let's give it a 9. And we go to our combine. Now the collision should be the highest. They should always just simply be the highest and be correct. All right, this is good. So, and we want that the material, the last material, we don't always want to set this manually to something. We are just set material here. So we can just set material in our collision. And we're just going to set this with the same index, so the +1, to our red one, our collision one, right? Compile this, and you're going to see even if I try to remove the last one, it will still be there because we're constantly writing it. All right.
Hey.